Reports concerning possible violations of election laws, post-election audit of electronic voting systems, printing absentee ballot applications for recounts, and granting rulemaking authority.
Lady from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 936 deals with the resolution of complaints about our election process. But the real complaints we should be talking about, the complaint that a majority of voters in both parties have, is that their elected representatives don't listen to them, that their vote doesn't count. A majority of Wisconsin counties, 43 counties that Trump won and 13 counties that Biden won, have already filed complaints about our election in the form of resolutions or referendums demanding that this legislature create fair maps that allow them to choose their representatives, not the other way around. This bill, SB 936, does nothing to address that complaint. SB 936 requires the legislature receive a copy of complaints about our election. Well, on October 28th, the Committee on State Affairs received hundreds of copies of complaints about our election and heard more than 6 hours of testimony about our electoral process. Every person, with the sole exception of Mr. Speaker, complained that our maps are not fair and that our electoral process is broken. This bill does not fix that, and no matter how many complaints of this nature are filed, Republicans continue to ignore a majority of Wisconsin voters. SB 936 would require reports about violations of election laws and audits of voting systems. Well, voters from all across Wisconsin, from rural to urban, have submitted very, very detailed reports about problems with our voting system. These reports were heard by the People's Maps Commission and the Speaker's very own portal on maps. These maps submitted by Wisconsinites detailed the real problem that we should be addressing. The real problem with our electoral process is that legislative districts are drawn to entrench one political party, regardless of the will of a majority of Wisconsin voters. SB 936 is a bill that Republicans like to say brings transparency to the election process. This is the same party who created our current maps in secret, destroyed hard drives to cover up their work, and voted this very bill out of a Senate committee by paper ballot and brought it right here to the Assembly floor with no public hearing. Transparency in our election process, this right here is transparency theater. So if we really want to address the complaints of Wisconsin voters, we don't need SB 936. We don't need to restrict anyone's right to vote. We don't need to take away ballot boxes. We don't need to take away democracy in the park. We don't need, as the gentleman from the 59th and his colleagues like to call, a transparent, full, forensic, physical cyber audit. That's not a solution. That's a word salad. SB 936 is not what Wisconsin voters need. What we need is an independent redistricting process like the one our neighbor Iowa has used for 40 years to create fair voting districts. They do so without spending millions on taxpayer-funded partisan lawsuits or investigations that do nothing but sow distrust in our election and produce little more than spelling errors. SB 936 is about resolving complaints about our elections. Well, we've got complaints, so many complaints, but complaining doesn't solve anything, and neither does this bill. Resolving complaints starts with Republicans who are willing to stand up and state the obvious, that Joe Biden won the state of Wisconsin fair and square. We will resolve complaints about our election process when we finally hold a public hearing on establishing an independent redistricting process, and we finally get fair maps that reflect the will of the people, not a political party. Thank you.
The question is,